your host, Sophia, and my guest today is Courtney Townley. Now, she is a and self leadership, well, health and self leader coach. Yes, I can speak, I promise. And she's been in the health and wellness space for over 30 years. And she's a new author. I am so excited to talk to her about her book. So let me just tell you the name of the book right now. It's Consistency Code. Now, that seems like a lot of us might need some of that. All right. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Sophia. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, okay, you just wrote a book. It was released on November 5th, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what made you write it?
Yeah. Well, a lot of things. Like number one, I had been teaching a course called the Consistency Code for several years, and a lot of people kept telling me you really need to turn this into a book. Um, and I didn't really know what I was signing up for with a book writing endeavor, but there's a lot that goes into writing a book. So that was about 5 years ago. It took me 5 years to author this book. But also, I've been in the women's wellness space for a long time. I've learned a lot of things. I've had to unlearn a lot of things.
Mm.
I have 400 episodes of my own podcast, and I just figured, you know what? Now's a good time. Nobody wants to listen to 400 episodes of a podcast. And so, how could I get across the mission and message of the show and my work in something that's more digestible? And so, a book was a beautiful fit.
So, okay, you mentioned you have a podcast. What's your podcast called?
It's called Grace and Grit.
Grace and Grit. So, I mean, somebody might want to listen to 400 episodes.
I mean,
We might as
yeah,
well
but,
throw it out there.
people who've been with me since the beginning. But I think for a new listener, that's just a very intimidating, right? To come in and
It
see 400 episodes. And so it seems like a nicer invitation to hand them a book than the 400 episodes.
Well, okay. Now, you guys, this is all audio right now. Eventually, you're probably going to see this on YouTube, but there's going to be a clip. And if you take a look at this lady, I want to call her a young lady because she says that she's been in the wellness space for over 30 years.
Yeah.
So before we actually got started, I was like, did you start when you were 12? Because she looks amazing. So tell us your journey a
Yeah.
little bit.
So I will tell you I'm 49. And when I was 18 years old, I was attending the University of Michigan. And I needed to make money to be able to have, to pay for bills and all the things.
Right?
And someone told me that the University Athletic Center was looking for basically a fitness trainer to teach a butts and guts class. I cannot make that up. That's literally what the class was called. And I had no experience as a fitness trainer, but of course, I had a ton of experience as a mover. So I boldly showed up to this interview, and I don't know why, but they hired me. And that was my entry into the wellness space. I taught a lot of classes for the University Athletic Center over 4 years. Once I graduated, I went on to Toronto to work for a certifying center called Stop Pilates. They teach people the Pilates method. They hired me on to be one of their instructor trainers. And that just, again, kept expanding my world of what women's wellness, what like all the opportunity in women's wellness.
Mm.
And so for about, I would say, probably 10 years, I really tackled women's wellness through the lens of fitness. And that was lovely until I really started to see this pattern that people, yes, they wanted to become better movers, but more than anything, they just wanted to feel better in
Right.
their bodies and about their lives. And there was a lot more to that equation than I was equipped to teach because it wasn't all about movement. It wasn't all about fitness.
Right.
I wasn't equipped with how do I help people to de-stress their lives and how do I help to give them information about nutrition. So I realized how little I knew, and I went on to get more education in nutrition and behavior change science and all the things. And then I fell into the world of fat loss for about a decade.
No.
And that was amazing in that I helped an awful lot of people lose an awful lot of weight. But again, saw a curious pattern that a lot of people would spend a year, 18 months reaching this goal weight. And then once they got there, they would slowly start to unravel back to where they started.
Right.
And so that got my brain thinking, okay, now what am I missing? I guess clearly there's still things that I'm not understanding here. So that led me into a lot of mindset work and understanding just emotional capacity and our ability to be with hard things. Um, the way that we think about ourselves, our self-image. And keep in mind too, like throughout all of these experiences, my clientele was largely the midlife woman. I was always working with the age bracket, I would say between like 40 and 60 years old. That was like my typical client.
Okay.
And that's a fascinating age group because not only are we living at a time in that age bracket with the most amount of stress we've probably ever contended with,
Mhm.
but we also have the least amount of hormones on board to help us deal with that stress.
Yep. We're
So
on vacation.
yeah, exactly. So I call this the renovation years, right? I call midlife the renovation years because to travel through it with your health and happiness intact, you are most likely going to have to do some serious renovation to the way that you've been living your life. And that doesn't have to be like, an awful process. It can be a really beautiful and fun process. But in essence, I just started to really learn through my journey that health is so much bigger than diet and exercise. It's really about stress management. It's really about learning to like who we are and what we do and why we do the things that we do. And that is what the consistency code was born out of.
Wow. And you oh my gosh, you just touched on so many things, right? Because and it's a mixed bag. It is the thing that's coming into my head right now is Forrest Gump and his
Yeah,
box of chocolates. It's like you never know what you're gonna get, right? Unless you
I
read the
know.
back of the box. And so every day could be something different
Yeah,
because in that age range, like you said, it's hormones. And if nobody's talked to you about it,
yeah,
because of course this has been a secret, you find out hot flashes, mood changes. That's it.
yeah,
And now I'm so glad that there's so much more information.
sure.
But when it comes to fitness and weight loss,
Mhm.
and if you're chronically fatigued because you're chronically stressed and your cortisol is like through the roof,
Yes,
then where do you even start? And I love that you're bringing in all the pieces because as we're talking, you're like, oh, here's a gap. I'm gonna learn something and fill it.
yeah,
And that I think in itself is a beautiful process for you
yeah,
going through that because you're like, oh, here's something else. And I love it's like, what's missing?
yeah. I love that you pointed those things out. I think that I am very blessed that I have always naturally been a very curious person. And curiosity, I have learned, is a very powerful skill set that a lot of women are not practicing because
Mhm.
what they're practicing instead is judgment and bereavement
Right.
and beating themselves up
Mhm.
or not doing things perfectly. And there is a really beautiful truth that you cannot be curious and judgmental at the same time. You get to be one or the other. And I highly recommend you choose curiosity because curiosity is intriguing, right? The curiosity sounds like, oh, isn't it interesting that every night at 5 o'clock, I come home from work telling myself I'm going to go for a little walk, but instead I pour another glass of wine. Right? Like, it is interesting.
It is interesting, but if we grew up in an era hearing "Curiosity killed the cat,"
Right.
I don't even know where that came from.
Seriously, where did that come
And
But I never
that's
heard
happened
that.
on our lives, but, whatever.
Yeah,
But if when things like that are ingrained in your system,
sure, of course.
then you don't even stop and think about being curious. And actually, the place I'm staying and sorry, I'm looking away, but it says, "Wine for women is as duct tape is for men. It fixes everything." So, when those types of things are ingrained, it's like, "Yeah, let's have another glass of wine. I don't need to go for that walk because that wine is gonna calm me down. That wine is gonna make me feel
Sure.
better." But when you drink that wine, maybe at 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, and then you wonder, it's like, "Why am I not sleeping well at night?" It's probably because you drank the wine too
Well,
well.
You're exactly right. So wine is a really easy go-to because it's low effort, right? All we have to do is open the bottle and pour the glass.
Yes.
Where walking even is also low effort, but it's more effort than pouring a glass of wine. And
Right.
I would also say that we're really good and we're even conditioned to artificially alter our chemistry in order to feel good.
Yes.
So whether that's eating something, drinking something, watching something, we are really good at going to the quick fix and countering that and choosing the more effort-filled behavior that's actually gonna serve our well-being is tough for all the reasons we just talked about, especially for midlife women, right? Because we're losing hormones and we're already living really stressed, fully packed lives. And so the idea of applying more effort anywhere is like, no thanks. I'll have the
Right.
glass of wine
Right. 'Cause I
until,
have to change my clothes. I have to put on shoes. I
yes,
have to
yes,
versus, oh, let's just go to the kitchen. If you're a white wine person, let's just open the fridge. If you're a red wine person, let's just go to the and then boom, there it is.
yeah.
And you mentioned other things too, um, eating or watching TV, and it can be a very emotional thing because it's not just a de-stressor. Sometimes it's a number because they're actual emotions that either you can't name or you can name it and you don't wanna feel it.
A thousand, it's so much easier to chemically alter our emotional landscape than it is to sit with emotions that are hard to feel or that we are just aren't comfortable with.
Mm.
So, absolutely, I think we reach for a lot of vices to alter our emotional landscape. And I also think that we reach for a lot of vices because we are living our days in a way that radically disrespects our nervous system.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is your nervous system, we have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, right? These are both parts of the autonomic nervous system. And we're meant to oscillate between the two of them all day long. So when we're in sympathetic, we're kind of alert and engaged and we're focused and we're putting in effort. It's kind of what a lot of people term as the fight or flight response.
Mhm.
And it's a beautiful response because it gets us to do things. But then we're supposed to go into periods of decompression, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest.
Mhm.
And the way that most, I would say, like Americans live their lives is we're in that fight or flight all day long, escalating, 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 and then we crash into rest and digest at the end of the day. But the way the nervous system is intended to work is periods of work, periods of rest, periods of work, periods of rest, right? All day long.
Right.
But because that's not how we organize or structure our lives, by the time we roll in the front door at the end of the day, the wine, the pizza, the Netflix, it all sounds so inviting because our nervous system is so desperate for some self soothing.
Yeah.
And all of those things are very easy ways to soothe the nervous system. Unfortunately, they have consequences on the other side. So
Right.
they're not really serving our well being, they're just temporarily making us feel better.
I swear, so many things jump into my head at the same time because there's a movie. I don't remember the name of the movie. I just remember the line that there will be consequences and repercussions.
Yeah. My mom used to say that all the time. There will be consequences. Yes.
Yeah. And sometimes, even though we know that,
Yeah,
intellectually, we know that,
sure.
we do it anyway
Mhm.
because you're like, well, if I feel good now, I can deal with that later.
Yeah, and the thing that I work on a lot with my clients is just recognizing that it's usually low resource availability. You are exhausted, you are depleted, you have used up all of your resources for the day, and so you don't have the bandwidth or the motivation or the energy to push back against the easy thing.
Mm, mhm.
And so it isn't as simple as just saying, well, I should be doing this instead. Like, you know that intellectually, I've never worked with a woman who did not know what the healthier choice was.
Right.
The bigger question is why aren't we doing the healthier thing? And a lot again, largely it circles back to the fact that we are living our days in a way that is completely taxing our system.
Mhm.
And so at the end of the day, we're just tapped out. We're just tapped out. So I know what I'm speaking to is so unsexy because what I'm inviting women to do is literally renovate the way that they're living their days. And that's not an overnight fix.
Right.
That's not a quick
It takes
fix.
some
That's
time.
not fun work. It's like it's the harder path, but ultimately it's the easier path because when women really start living their days in a way that respects their true resource availability, they start noticing that they don't need the wine at night. And they don't necessarily need to do all the emotional eating because they actually like how they're living their lives. And they still have some gas in the tank at the end of the day.
Okay, so that sounds a lot like part one of your book, which you talk about demolition, reimagine, and renovate. So now I'm just taking a guess because I haven't read the book yet. And
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
so it sounds like, and then just jump in whenever you want. But when I think about demolition, this like breaking down everything that you know or you think you know, all the things that you've learned that you have to unlearn. Then you have to kind of just reimagine what can my life look like, bringing in the curiosity. And then renovate. It's like, okay, now that I know what it could look like, it's like moving around the furniture in your house. Or actually, that's not even renovating. That's just moving shit around. But like, that's kind of like, I'm going to have a brand new kitchen. So that's like a complete renovation because it looks maybe similar to what it was before, but now it's kinda just different because you've taken out the cabinets or you've repainted or you've gotten a new sink, and you see where I'm going, people, I want a new kitchen.
Well, yeah, and think about why we rented it. We kind of know ourselves better and we know how we like to live in our home. And when our home isn't set up for that kind of life, we engage in renovation because we want it to feel more aligned with how we're living now. So that's exactly what it is. So the whole first part of the book is called Women's Health 2.0. And the idea behind the first part of the book is really challenging the reader to acknowledge the problem with the way we've been sold health.
Mm.
Because women's health has largely been sold through the lens of diet and exercise and a clothing size and a weight on the scale and a body fat percentage, and I could go on and on,
Right?
right? And so that whole first section of demolition is really challenging what health actually is. I don't think that I propose this in the book, but health is not a data point, which I know some people hear that and they're like, "But it is. My cholesterol tells me if I'm healthy." Data is a part of health,
Mhm.
but it is not the full definition of health,
Right.
right? Data kind of tells you if you're treating your body in a way that helps it to function well, but it's not your complete health story. We're
Mhm.
also told that health is a look, right? Like I should be able to look at somebody and tell if they're healthy. And I always say looking at someone's body and trying to determine if they're healthy is like looking at their social media account and saying that you understand their whole life.
Yes.
It doesn't really tell you anything. It just tells you about what they look like.
Mhm.
But I've worked with a ton of athletes, very high level fitness people over the years who were a very far cry from healthy because they were mentally and emotionally very broken.
Mm.
So we have to really look at the wholeness of health, and that's really what the second chapter is all about, which is reimagine. We have to reimagine what health is, and what I want to offer your listeners is that health, number one, is multidimensional. It's not just physical. Physicality is a part of our health.
Mhm.
How well our biology is working, of course, is a part of it. But our mental health, our emotional health, our relationship health, environmental health, spiritual health, all of those other dimensions contribute to the functioning of our physical well being.
Right,
So
'cause
we
we're
can't,
we're a whole being,
we're a whole being.
and then it just and a lot of times, you don't go and see anybody until something is wrong with the
The
body,
physical,
right?
yes.
The
Yes.
physical. So, then you get your numbers, your data, and it's like, "Oh, well, you're within normal range." And it's like, "Yeah, but I don't feel good."
I feel lost, right?
You know?
Exactly.
And it's not always looking at the whole person. But I love that you're talking about all the different types of health,
Yeah,
because if you're not looking at your emotional health, if you're not looking at your mental well-being, if you're in a toxic relationship, all of these things are gonna affect the person.
of course. And if you look at the root of the word healing, the Latin root, it actually means a return to wholeness. It's not a return to just biochemical workings, right? It's a return to wholeness. So yes, we have to address the wholeness of the human, which it's really interesting, isn't it? I think in Western medical care, it's like we compartmentalize health. We go to the therapist, the mental health,
Mhm.
or we go to the bone doctor, or we go to the dentist. Like it's all these separate specialties, and
Right.
yet they're all contributing to the health of the wholeness, the
Yeah.
health of the human. So the other thing I would say about health is it's dynamic. It's not something that you have or don't have. Right? It's something that's always evolving
Mhm.
because life is always evolving. Your total stress load is always changing. So there will be periods of your life where you have a lot more resources to give to your own self-care
Mhm.
because life isn't as stressful. And then you're gonna go through periods where life is throwing a lot at you,
Yeah.
and you have to re like, readjust your expectations for what you have to give. And
Mhm.
I find that the one of the problems with our wellness culture is that we're almost conditioned to believe that consistency is showing up in the same way all the time, regardless of what's happening in your life.
Mm.
And I just want to say that that's a recipe for breakdown and burnout, right? Like, health is about meeting yourself where you are today with what you have to give
Mhm.
and asking, "What does self-care look like today based on where I'm at?"
Right. And that is a nice way to look at it because it doesn't have to be the same thing all the time. And if I'm hearing right, it probably shouldn't be the same thing all the time because every day you're going to need something a little bit different. So today, self care could mean I am just not turning on anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to understand what silence actually sounds like. That could be self care. Self care could be taking a walk
Mhm.
in nature, preferably away from all the congestion of the cars and whatnot. But
Yeah.
even still, it could be taking a walk and you're not in nature, you're on the sidewalk,
Yeah.
but you're outside.
Yeah.
You're getting sun, or maybe you took that moment to not drink that wine after dinner and
Exactly.
you went for that evening walk, which would help you digest better, actually, if you go for the evening walk after dinner. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, you don't have to be stuck in the same, this is how I'm going to do self care every single day, every single moment. I can switch it up.
Yeah, that I always say rigidity is the death of consistency. So if you and I've seen this throughout my career time and time again, when someone is incredibly rigid in the way that they approach self-care, it's usually costing them their health on some level.
Mm,
So we have to learn how to be flexible and also stay honest because here's the deal. I have seen women use the notion of grace as rationale for not having to do any work. Okay. I've seen that. Yeah, I know you have too, I'm sure. And I've done it myself, right? Where it's like I've used grace as like again, like an excuse for not having to do the work that I called myself to do. But I've also seen the opposite. I've seen a lot of women use grit to the point of self-destruction.
mm,
So the reason my company is Grace and Grit is because health does not live in the end on the end of a spectrum. It lives in somewhere on a sweet spot in the center. You need both. You need
right.
grace, which is compassion and kindness and curiosity, like we talked about. But grit is the thing that says, okay, like we've got some resources today. We're going to lean into some hard stuff. We're
Mm,
going to make those phone calls. We're going to have those hard conversations. We're going to set a boundary. We're going to go do that workout. And it's where if you need more grace or more grit is something that only you know. And this is the part of self-leadership. I call myself a health and self-leadership coach because no one out there in the world knows your life the way that you do.
right.
So no one can tell you today if self-care looks like applying a little more grace or a little more grit. That's between you and you.
And I think, okay, that is huge between you and you because if you don't know you,
Mhm.
because at somewhere along the line you lost you,
Totally.
whether it's like through work or through a relationship
Or all of the above.
or so I know some people have kids, so if it's through kids, whatever it is that you have given yourself into and that you've possibly even given your power over to, you may not even know what grace looks like to you or what grit looks like
Yep.
to you, or to find that middle ground between grace and grit because you don't know.
You don't
And
know.
sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you get somebody who can maybe point out to you what is obvious to them and is in your blind spot
Yeah.
because you have no idea.
Yep. And this is why I think coaches are so valuable, right? Because this is what coaching is. Coaching is, I always say to my clients, I'll be your coach until you're willing to assume the role yourself.
Mhm.
Like I'm literally going to work myself out of a job. That's my job.
Right.
I will walk alongside of you and point out some potholes and things that, you are creating some needless suffering.
Mhm.
But once I teach you skill sets, it's I need to pass that on to you at some point, right? Where you're kind of taking that and running it yourself. So I do think I always call them the helpers and the healers of the world. They can give incredible guidance. I think the danger is a lot of women have been outsourcing decisions around their wellness for so long
Right.
that they have forgotten how to insource. And insourcing, you will never have deep health unless you learn how to insource, which is basically going in every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and just saying, "Hey, Sophia, how you doing today?" And when you give the superficial answer, "Oh, I'm fine,"
Mhm.
it's like the really good friend who's like, "No, how are you really doing today, Sophia?"
Yeah.
Right? And it's our willingness to be very honest with ourselves that, "Gosh, I did not sleep well last night, and I have been feeling like a lot of brain fog and really reactive lately." That's it. Like, what is that about? Like just taking a moment to just even recognize what is true for you.
Yeah.
You may not even know where it's coming from. You don't need to know, but just recognizing the truth of what is
Yeah.
allows you to be such a better problem solver when it comes to your health.
And I love that because, again, we're approaching ourselves with curiosity.
Exactly.
And it's like, yeah, what do I need? Because I think that our vocabulary for feeling what our feelings are, yes, I just air quoted what our feelings are, and what's going on in our bodies, we have limited vocabulary for it
Mhm.
because we default. Because generally when somebody says, "Hey," just well, of course, you're gonna ask yourself because you should care how you are, right? But when somebody else says to you, "Hey, how are you doing?" Deep down, there's a part of you that thinks they don't really care. They don't wanna hear how I'm really doing, so you say, "I'm fine." And you say it enough times that you end up saying it to yourself as well.
Totally. And I hope that everyone listening to this at least has that one person in their life that when they ask you how you are, it's almost like brings tears to your eyes because they do care,
Mhm.
right? And that's what we have to become for ourselves. So we hear a lot in the wellness space, like this whole concept of self-love. And that's a beautiful thing. And of course, we all want to aspire to loving ourselves. But people who have been self-loathing their entire life, self-love feels like a very big ask. It feels
Mhm.
very far away.
Yeah.
So, yes, curiosity, but also the invitation that I give to my clients who are struggling with this concept of self-love is just consideration. Because
Mm.
that's what respect is. It's just having consideration for the person you're in the room with. And that person being you, what would consideration for yourself look like today?
Mhm.
Might it look like going to bed 20 minutes earlier or actually not eating your lunch in front of your computer screen? Like, what feels considerate to you today? Those are breadcrumbs to health. Those are the breadcrumbs that will lead you to a much deeper state of health.
And those are such sweet baby steps,
Such
you
baby
know?
steps.
But all of the baby steps add up because you take baby step after baby step and, like, you're far away. 'Cause okay, I'll even use myself this morning kind of as a baby step kinda thing. So, I in a different location than I usually am, and somebody told me about this trail, and I knew I had things to do, but I'm like, "I really wanna go walk this trail because I usually walk in the mornings anyway,
Okay.
so I try to keep consistent
Yeah.
with the walking in the morning thing.
Yeah, beautiful.
So I walked out this morning and it's like, okay, well, I could just go down here and turn around because that would be like the baby step kind of. It's like, well, you did that would be the check the
It's
box.
something versus nothing,
Yeah,
right?
it's that
Yeah.
check the box, right?
Yeah.
I walked this morning, but that to me would have been just kind of a baby step and maybe a little bit of a cop out. So I was like, okay, well, the trail's not that far. So I went, I'm on this trail. It is amazing. And I'm walking and I'm walking and I'm walking. And so each step,
Yeah.
as I'm going, you could consider a baby step in something that you could
Sure.
do. And before I knew it, I was so far down this trail that I had to remind myself, it's like, hey, you need to turn back now because you have things to do. But it's amazing just how far you can get as you're putting one foot in front of the other, and you're just paying attention to your surroundings, you're paying attention to yourself. So that just really brings me into what you talk about is awareness. So there's the self-awareness, there's awareness of your environment, there's just awareness of what you see. And I think also and I'm going a little left, but when you actually see beauty and you can see the beauty in things, it just is such a calming effect, and it's just makes everything easier when you can see beauty and feel gratitude. So you're seeing the beauty and you're feeling the gratitude for actually being there and being able to experience it. And for me, that is so calming. So
It is so calming, and it also I think that level of attention that it helps us to acknowledge beauty and gratitude. Again, it's a little effort filled. I listened to a TED Talk once, I can't tell you who it was, but I remember him saying, "The human brain to the negative is like Velcro. It sticks.
mhm.
The negative sticks, and it's so easy to access. But the positive is almost like Teflon. It's just like slides off, like we have to fight to keep it around."
Yeah.
And so, for whatever reason, I think there is a lot of truth to that. We do have to work a little harder at acknowledging the good and acknowledging what is beautiful about the day. And with my clients, I always call it joy spotting, right? Like, what are the things I learned that from Ingrid Fattel Lee, who's an architect. She wrote a whole book about joy. But anyway, joy spotting is a really big thing in my community. And we just talk about like, what are the things that help to put a little more life in your life today? And the more of those things that you acknowledge, you start to feel better. And when you start to feel better, you start to actually do better. You start taking care of yourself better. You start showing up differently in your life. And so it seems, again, like such a simple, small thing to be grateful or look for beauty or look for joy. But again, I really truly believe that those are all elements of nourishment that
Mhm.
lead us to a state of deep health.
And I think it's also, as we create habits,
Yeah.
we wanna break habits,
Yeah.
but then we also wanna create habits.
Yeah.
And so I think that as we start creating new habits that can really help calm our nervous system,
Mhm.
then it just becomes easier to do something new again. That it does create that it although it creates that momentum for trying a new thing. Or it's like, "Oh, well, if I've done this, maybe I can do this too." And just innately brings up your curiosity.
So, breaking a habit is a much harder task than starting a new habit. And so when I talk about behavior change with my clients, I always remind them, even though there's things we want to stop doing, what we want to commit to is what we're going to start
Start
doing
doing.
in order to put less attention on that thing. And this is really important, I think, for people to hear because so often we're like, I just need to stop eating sugar. But when
Right.
we tell ourselves that, what does your brain do? It just looks for every opportunity to eat
Eat
sugar.
sugar. It's like, I want sugar.
Yeah, it's like the inner toddler comes out in full force, right?
Yeah.
But if I start eating more vegetables or I start eating more protein or I start eating more frequent meals throughout the day, by way of that, I am naturally going to eat less sugar. And so I always encourage people to look for the start. What's the thing you're going to start doing rather
Mm,
than focusing on what you're going to stop doing? Because,
right.
yes, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. But I do think we create a lot more resistance for ourselves when we're always focusing on the stop because nobody wants to be told not to do something.
Right. And then I think there is, just because of the way our brain works, there's a level of, if I have to stop something, I'm depriving myself of something.
Yes.
Versus if I start something, I get to do something.
I get to, exactly. I get to, I want to. Like that's a more inviting energy than the constraint or the discipline.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about organization, follow through, and realignment.
Yes. So, just so it's clear for the listener, there's 4 parts to the consistency code, right? And I call them 4, they're 4 umbrellas of practices. The first one we just talked about, which was the practice of awareness, because you can't change what you're not willing to acknowledge.
Mhm.
So, we have to bring, I always say, the mess out into the light
Mhm.
because healing happens in light. And once we can kind of see the gaps and the places in our life where we have a lot of what I call integrity pain. Integrity pain is just that internal friction that you're not showing up the way you want to. That's all it is.
Mm.
We all have it, and we have 10,000 forms of it. So when I start acknowledging where my integrity pain is, I get to decide where do I want to start cleaning up first. Because here's the deal. You're going to have a lot of integrity pain and you're going to have a lot of things in your life you could clean up, but you can't clean them all up at once.
Right.
Like when you have a messy house, you can't just snap your fingers and clean it all up at once. That'd be
Actually,
lovely.
I wish that could happen.
Mary Poppins can do it, but not us mere mortals cannot, right? So I have to decide I'm going to start just with my kitchen sink. I'm going to clean the dishes. Great. Well, the same goes for behavior change. We just have to pick some place to start.
Mhm.
So, but once we pick a place, we have to organize ourselves in a way to make it easy for our brain to show up in that way. Because your brain
Mhm.
is it's doing a lot in the day, right? It's very decision tired. And so, if you are not making it easy to engage with this new behavior, your brain is totally going to forget about it, right? And you're going
Mhm.
to override it with a lot of old behavior. We also have to organize ourselves in a way, like we said earlier, that respect your nervous system. So that's the practice of organization. How do we do those things so we can show up more easily for ourselves? The practice of follow through is probably where I do 90% of my coaching because we can have the best laid plans. A lot of women do, but then they don't show up for any of it, at least none of it that has to do with them, right? Anything that's revolving around their own self-care, they negotiate their way out of. So the practice of follow through largely comes down to the dosage of the commitment
Mhm.
because we love to overcommit. We're so good at that,
Yeah.
right? We overcommit. So we have to make sure that we're committing to just enough that we feel challenged, but not so much that we feel overwhelmed. We also have to parent our brain. We have to coach ourselves into the work rather than keep talking ourselves out of the work because we're awesome at that. We're so good at talking ourselves out of the work. So we have to learn skill sets that actually talk us into the work. That's what parenting your brain is. And then the third part is we have to be willing to be uncomfortable and inconvenienced and a little bit frustrated sometimes because that's just what change demands. You're going to have to feel those things without drinking the wine, without eating the sugar, without buffering with something that is just going to temporarily make you feel better.
Right.
So, all of those skill sets fall under the practice of follow through. And then the last piece of the code is the practice of realignment because life is going to throw you off kilter all the
All the
time,
time.
sometimes 45 times a day. Right? And so what are the things that help you to realign quicker? And the analogy I always use for this is a campfire. I live in Montana, so we do lots of campfires. And if you've ever built a campfire, you know that it takes a lot of work up front. You got to go find the wood. You got to make sure it's dry. You've got to build the fire pit. You've got to like have the right wind conditions, right? You've got to hold the match just in the right place. But once you get the fire going, all you have to do to keep it going when the flame starts to dim is you just throw another log in. So wouldn't it be awesome If with our own routines and own commitments to our self-care, when we get misaligned, what's the log that we throw in the fire that just gets us recommitted,
Mm,
right?
mhm,
And there's lots of tools that I teach to help women do that, but really the practice of realignment is really just encouraging ourselves to pivot back faster. And something that may help the listener with this is health is really just a direction. It's not a destination. It's just a
mhm.
direction that we travel in for as long as we have breath in our lungs. And there will be a lot of moments in your lifetime where you are what I call lost in the woods. Okay. You're just not really traveling in the direction of health. You got a little, disoriented and you're traveling in a different direction.
Right.
But the beautiful thing about this is the only thing you are one decision away from traveling back in the direction of health. One decision. And what that one decision is different for all of us.
Right.
And there is no right decision. It's just making a decision that moves us back in that direction.
And I love that you're talking about making a decision because I know, especially with a lot of high achieving women, you can just jump in or fall in, as it were, to analysis paralysis,
Sure.
where you just can't make a decision. Or is it really that you can't, or you don't want to, or you don't like the choices?
Yeah.
So it's harder to make a decision.
Mhm.
But I like that. It's just one decision. It's almost like when you're using your GPS because GPS is telling you, go this way, go this way, go this
Yeah.
way. But sometimes you can't necessarily go the way that they're telling you because, I don't know, there's a road
Right.
blockage or something. And then you turn somewhere else. And then it just says rerouting, rerouting, rerouting. So
Exactly.
that is what we need to learn to do faster. So when we're not necessarily on the path that we know will lead us to where we would like to go, we just need to listen to that inner rerouting voice or listen to your coach's rerouting voice.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
then the other thing that I like that you brought up are a lot of these things are skills gaps. So it's not that you can't do it, they're things that you just need to learn.
Mhm.
And it's just a skill that you may not have mastered yet.
But this is it, Sophia, because where a lot of women's brains go in the health conversation is I need a new diet. I need a new exercise plan to follow. I need the list of rules and regulations and everything will be good. And what I am here to tell you is no, you need self-leadership skills. You need to refine your self-leadership skills because life is transformation. It's not a once in a lifetime transformation. It is a series of transformations.
Yes. Yes.
And so, where are we learning the skill sets that help us to navigate a lifetime of transformation? A diet is not going to do that for you. An
Right.
exercise program is not going to do that for you. Now, please don't hear me saying that I don't think those things can help you along your journey. They can. But at the end of the day, we cannot escape this level of work if we want deep health because this is the stuff that is going to help you to stay the course, no matter how you eat or no matter what kind of exercise you like to do. It's really relevant to every human.
Wow. I love this conversation and the way we are talking about health and the way that we're talking about achieving health, but not as an end goal,
Yeah.
as an ongoing goal
Yes.
and as a daily practice.
A daily practice and as a way of nourishing relationship because that's what health is. It's a relationship with everything around you and everything inside of you. So you're in a relationship with exercise. You're in a relationship with nature, with time, with boundaries, with other people. And the most intimate long term relationship you're ever going to have is the one you have with yourself.
Exactly.
And if that relationship is not healthy, you will never be healthy. I don't care how much muscle mass you have. I don't care how lean you are, what your blood profiles say. You will not be healthy on a deep level if you don't like who you are.
Yes. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that is the one relationship that a lot of people just neglect
Sure.
so
So
much.
easy to keep
And
putting it up.
it's easy to neglect it because, again, a lot of times it just goes back to the beliefs that you're holding on to, which could be stories that you've heard, things that have happened to you, things that people have said, whether in your early upbringing or even last week. Somebody who you hold in high regard may have said something really shitty.
Yeah.
And then now you've held on to that
Yeah.
and you're creating a whole story around who you are
Yeah.
because of what they said,
Mhm.
and not even realizing that on a deep internal level, you have just affected your health because now your mental health, your emotional health are not in a great state. And then that could affect your physical health because depending on how you choose to cope,
Yeah.
you could, you know, go eat something that's not necessarily good for you. And I mean, there are things that we probably should not eat, like highly processed foods and stuff like that. But if you do eat it, again, not necessarily good for you, but the reason that you eat it.
Oh, it's everything. Why you do
Yeah.
anything is everything.
Can you just eat it and say, "You know what? I ate this because I wanted it, and I feel good about that."
Yeah.
Versus I felt really crappy and I ate it, and now there's a whole lot of guilt and shame and all those other things that
I
are
love that you're
associated with that.
mentioning this because I think this is it's a huge skill set in and of itself. And the way that I coach my community around it is I just always encourage them to ask, "Do you like your reasons? Do you like your reason for drinking the bottle of wine last night?" Like, if your girlfriend you haven't seen in 30 years came into town and you guys went out and you had a great time, I bet you're gonna like your reasons. Are you gonna have consequences? Sure, but you're also gonna be okay with the consequences because you wouldn't have traded it for the world,
Right.
right? But there's other nights you're drinking the bottle of wine because you had a stressful day at work and you're not willing to have certain conversations or set certain boundaries, and I bet in that situation, you're not gonna like your reasons.
Right.
And that's just great to know, right? Like, if I don't like my reasons, I'm being called into work here. I'm being called into some decision making, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and
Right.
that's okay. I don't have to make that mean anything terrible. But that is what I call your curriculum. It's the work that life is handing you to say, this is how we develop, this is how we expand, this is how
Mhm.
we do better.
I love that. I love that. So now if people wanna find you, how do you
Yes.
do that?
The best place is probably just my website, graceandgrit.com. You'll find the book is there, my podcast is there, all the things are on my website.
Okay, and all your socials are there too?
All my socials are there. Yep. Grace and Grit on Instagram. Grace Grit on Instagram is my handle. But yeah, all my handles are on my website as well.
Okay, perfect. I have just loved this conversation so much because I think it's so important to really just dive into everything that creates health and just understand that it's not one thing, it's not two things, but it's addressing the whole person.
Mhm. It is. And it's meeting yourself with compassion and kindness and just realizing that it's a relationship that needs work. It's not a destination, which I think is very counter to the way that we've approached it for the last 40 years in the wellness industry.
Well, it has been such a pleasure, and I'm sure that we'll talk again soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much, Sophia.
You're welcome.